If you were told that a child of only 3 years old unintentionally dug up an artifact with almost 4 millennia of history, right in the exact place where David defeated Goliath, would you believe it? Well, that's exactly what happened. While many people still insist on treating the Bible as a symbolic book, archaeology and faith come together in a discovery that leaves any expert open-mouthed. He was not a theologian, nor a famous archaeologist. She was a girl with small hands and attentive eyes. Telzeka, the biblical battlefield where giants fell, now holds a new kind of miracle, a digger, a Canaanite amulet, revealed by the innocent hands of Ziv Nitzan. This is not just curious. It is a slap in the face of incredulity, a message straight from the past for those who doubt what is written. What's more, it's a palpable confirmation that the soil of faith is firm, literal, and full of buried truths, waiting to be found. Have you ever stopped to think how many proofs of the Bible are under our feet, hidden like seeds waiting for the right season to bloom? Because this story shows that the season has arrived, and it came through the hands of a child, as a reminder that truth doesn't need brute force. It needs purity, attention, and courage. After all, who said that great discoveries can't come in small hands? It was just an ordinary walk, like so many others, in the heart of Israel. Little did the Nitzan family imagine that at Telzeka, yes, the same one mentioned in the Bible as the battlefield between David and Goliath, something special would happen. Little Ziv, with curious hands and watchful eyes, caught sight of a strange glow on the dusty ground. She bent down, picked it up, wiped it with her fingers, and there was what would change the narrative of the day and, who knows, of history. An enigmatic and silent excavator crossed centuries until he found shelter in the hands of a child. Now stop and think with me. How many times do we step on history without realizing it? This excavation did not appear by chance, and Telzeka is not just any place either. We are talking about a place where archaeology, faith, and memory meet, right there among the ruins of Canaan. It's as if each grain of sand has something to tell. Have you ever imagined if every family outing could deliver a piece of history around the world? That's that. It happened there, in front of the valley where David faced Goliath. Ziv didn't know what he was holding, but his parents' eyes lit up. That amulet, even without knowing its name, carried weight. And it wasn't just because of time. That symbol, almost whispering ancient secrets, echoed the sound of the caravans that passed, the peoples who fought, the prayers made under the scorching sun of Canaan. Basically, that day became a testimony that the Bible, once again, was not just right. She was alive. It is curious how archaeology often does not begin with sophisticated excavations, but with the simplicity of those who observe. And here comes an important point, being aware of the invisible. In times where everything is disposable, a millennial excavator reminds us that there are treasures everywhere, including inside the home. Parents, be careful. Your children can hide great finds, not only in their pockets, but in their attitudes. Teaching how to observe is more valuable than teaching how to memorize. Ziv's discovery shines a light on something that many are trying to erase: the legitimacy of the biblical accounts. When the little girl touched the object, it wasn't just stone and clay. It was history pulsating. Telzeka, Canaan, Goliath. Names that for many seemed like legends. Now they get a new chance to be taken seriously. After all, it's not every day that a little girl finds a digger where a giant has fallen. And if a child was able to reveal such a powerful trace, imagine what else can be waiting for him, hidden under the feet of those who walk distractedly. That's why, in the next point, we're going to take a closer look at this Canaanite scarab. And to understand why it was not just an ancient knickknack, it was, in fact, a portal to the spirituality and power of the times of Egypt and Canaan. When archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority, IAA, laid eyes on the small object found by Ziv, they realized that it was not something ordinary. It was a digger, an amulet, scarab amulet from the Middle Bronze Age, dating back about 300-800 years. This throws us straight into the time of Abraham, when Canaan and Egypt were already exchanging symbols, culture, and faith. At Exodus 12:40 we read, "Now the time that the children of Israel dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. In other words, the relationship between these lands was deep and ancient. and the object discovered testifies to this. The scarab was not just art, it was belief cast in stone. Its carvings reveal symbols of life, rebirth, and divine power, concepts that are very strong both in Egyptian culture and among the peoples of Canaan. In Deuteronomy 6:9, the people are directed to write them on the doorposts of your house and on your doors. This practice of inscribing faith on the objects and walls of life was already echoed centuries before Moses. The scarab was, therefore, a portable form of spirituality. These amulets were found in tombs, temples, houses. They were seals of protection, symbols of identity, and even political tools. As we see in Genesis 41:42, when Joseph receives from Pharaoh the sealing ring, linen garments, and golden necklace, it becomes clear how the objects carried authority. The excavator Ziv found may have belonged to someone important or perhaps been used in a ritual. Every detail engraved on it screams history, power, and faith. The most fascinating thing is that this type of artifact carries within itself the mixture of worlds. Egypt, with its gods and temples, Canaan, with its clans and pacts, and the future promise of a people who would inherit that land. All of this is found in an object the size of a child's palm. And when we think of Psalm 78:5, he established a testimony in Jacob and set a law in Israel, we understand that every discovery like this reinforces the testimonies of the past. It is impossible to ignore the spiritual dimension of such a find. The scarab beetle speaks of the human search for the divine, of the attempt to seal in stone what is desired in the spirit. He is a graven prayer. In Ecclesiastes 3:15 it is written, "That which is, once was, and what will be, has also been." God asks for an account of what happened. And isn't that exactly what archaeology does? Tell me what happened. And it reveals that nothing is lost before the eyes of God. And that's when we begin to realize this excavation, coming from Canaan, shaped in the shadow of the pyramids of Egypt and found on a biblical battlefield, is far from being just a museum piece. He is a link between cultures, times, and promises. And in the next point, we will dive even deeper into this exchange between kingdoms, where Egypt not only influenced, but dominated. Because where there is power, there are also vestiges. And where there are traces, the Bible is lurking, ready to be confirmed once more. It is easy to imagine Canaan and Egypt as two distant worlds, but you only have to look closely to see that they were intertwined. The excavation found by Ziv shows just that. Egyptian symbols engraved in Canaanite territory. During the Middle Bronze Age, Egypt extended its influence as if planting invisible flags. As Genesis 12:10 says, "There was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there." The movement between these peoples was constant and full of exchanges. This influence was not only political, it was spiritual, artistic, and even administrative. The Egyptian language, its hieroglyphics, its beliefs, all of these slowly penetrated the soil of Canaan. The excavation is a concrete example of this, an object with traces of Egyptian royalty, used as a seal of identity or protection, in the middle of the land where Israel would flourish. As in Acts 7:22, "And Moses was instructed in all the knowledge of the Egyptians," we see that even the great leaders of Israel drank from this foreign knowledge. At Tel Zeka, where the object was found, this Egyptian presence seems to whisper among the stones. Professor Oded Lipschitz, who has been excavating there for more than a decade, reinforces this place was a strategic city, a point of intersection between cultures. Just as today we cross borders with a passport, at the time the excavation was the seal that opened doors. It was the identity of someone who had a voice in the midst of the chaos of the tribes. It was like a sacred calling card. What's more, artifacts like this show that the Bible does not lie when it reports this relationship between empires. In Joshua 24:14, we read, "Take away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord." In other words, the people brought with them memories, influences, and even amulets from Egypt. The scarab does not contradict Scripture. On the contrary, it confirms it with archaeological accuracy. When a biblical object is found, the Word takes shape, shapes its ground. These findings open our eyes to a powerful reality. Faith and history go together. It is not just about discovering artifacts, but recognizing that the Bible is also an archaeological map. As the wise men of Proverbs 25:2 say, "The glory of God is to cover up a deal, but the glory of kings is to search him." And in this case, excavating Tel Zeka is more than digging dirt. It is revealing prophecies that were sleeping under the dust. Now, if a scarab already has this power, imagine when it is publicly recognized. The next point, we will see what happened when this small 3,800-year-old amulet gained space in one of Israel's most important museums, proving that faith, science, and curiosity can go hand in hand, even in an illuminated glass display case. It is not every day that a 3-year-old child becomes the protagonist of an archaeological discovery that makes noise. But that's exactly what happened to Ziv Nitzan. The family's attitude of immediately notifying the authorities drew attention. In Proverbs 22:6, it is written, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Here, the practical teaching of honesty has become a national example, rewarded with an exemplary certificate of citizenship from the IAA. The reward was more than a role. It was the recognition that each citizen can be a guardian of historical memory. Imagine the impact this has on a child, growing up knowing that your little hands held part of the history of Canaan, Egypt, and the Bible is priceless. As in Psalm 8:2, "Out of the mouths of little children and suckers you have raised up strength." Sometimes what adults ignore, the little ones reveal with purity and eternal impact. The discovered excavation has earned a prominent place at the J. and Jeannie Schottenstein Israel National Archaeology Campus. This museum is not just a building full of display cases. It is a time capsule where faith and science embrace. During Easter, the artifact was presented to the public. People of all ages stood in front of that window, as if looking at a petrified miracle. It was as if time had been bottled up there, in that amulet. To see the scarab among such rare pieces is to remember that the stories of the Bible are not buried in the past. They continue to be revealed. In John 1:14 it says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." In a symbolic way, this phrase echoes in the excavation that now dwells among us in visible form. He is not only an object of study, he is an eyewitness to an era where faith and civilization danced together among the stones of the desert. The exhibition also generated a new interest in Tel Zeka. Tourists, scholars, believers, and even skeptics began to look more closely at that place. What was once just dust and ruins was now transformed into a living chapter of Scripture. Remember David and Goliath? Well, the stage of battle is more present than ever. And as Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped, for the evidence of things not seen." This scarab became this proof stamped on glass, but that's not all. Because more than exposure, what this find represents is the material confirmation of something that was already in the hearts of believers. And in the next point, let's explore just that. How evidence like this reinforces the biblical accounts and shows that the sacred text has deep roots, both spiritual and geographical. When we say that the Bible is alive, we are not just talking about metaphor. We are talking about excavating Tel Zeka, Canaan, and now, a real piece that confirms what many doubt. The valley between Soko and Azekah, described in 1 Samuel 1:2, exists. The battlefield where David faced Goliath is not just ancient poetry, it is geography. And the amulet found by Ziv, on that same soil, becomes a kind of second testimony, as Deuteronomy 19:15 says. This kind of archaeological evidence shuts the mouths of many skeptics, and more, it opens the eyes of those who doubt. Because it's not just a beautiful object, it is an anchor in reality. The Bible speaks and the ground confirms it. In Luke 19:40, Jesus said, "If these keep silent, the very stones will cry out." For the stones cried out. A scarab has spoken for millennia and no one listened, until a child lifted it off the ground. The Egyptian presence in the region, proven by the artifact, also validates the biblical context of oppression, domination, and liberation. When we see the Bible narrate Joseph as governor of Egypt, Genesis 41:41, and the people of Israel being molded in the midst of this influence, All of this is echoed in the discovery. Every detail carved into the scarab is like a divine footnote. Yes, this all happened here. There is no contradiction, there is confirmation. Another powerful detail is the way this discovery dialogues with faith. Imagine praying for an answer and finding that there is proof, literal and visible, that your belief is not baseless. In Romans 15:4 it is written, "For whatever things were written aforetime were written for our learning." When the past materializes in the hands of a child, the present is also strengthened. Faith receives columns. This scarab not only points to the veracity of the biblical narrative, but also reveals a God who does not allow himself to be forgotten. He makes even a 3-year-old girl an instrument of revelation. This reminds us of 1 Corinthians 1:27. God chose the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. Who knew that a 3,800-year-old artifact would surface on a family outing? That's that. God doesn't use the stage, he uses purpose. And if even archaeology is confirming the Bible, imagine what else might be to come. In the next content, we will dive even deeper into the spiritual between the lines of this discovery and understand how something so small can be one of the greatest answers our generation has ever received about the truthfulness of the Word. And now tell me, how many truths have you left buried in your own soil? How many times has faith bumped into doubt and you let it go? Zivnitsin's story is not just about archaeology, excavating, or Canaan. It's about being mindful, about realizing that even a simple walk can hide an answer from God. If a 3-year-old child was instrumental in revealing the Bible to the modern world, what are you, with everything you already know, doing with it? This discovery not only reinforces the story of David and Goliath, but also calls you to a personal battle between believing or continuing to ignore the signs. Have you been looking for evidence of faith in your life? Have you been digging in the right place? Or have you lived superficially, like someone who runs past Tel Zeka without realizing that he is treading on promises? It's time to stop, reflect, and act. Start investigating your own story. Read the Bible as if digging for the truth. Talk to your children about faith as if handing out a treasure map. And most of all, keep your eyes and your heart attentive. Because sometimes God speaks through an amulet, or of a child with hands dirty with dust and a soul clean of fear. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe that finds like this are really proof of biblical veracity? What other signs have you seen around and missed? Write here in the comments, and share this video with someone who still needs to excavate their faith. And of course, if this content made you think differently, if it gave you a new vision, if it moved something inside, subscribe to this channel right now, activate the bell, and stay with us. Because here we don't deliver shallow information. We dig until we find what really transforms.